what I want to talk about today is what I look for in a traditional slip joint knife. Now, you may be looking to purchase a knife, either new or an older vintage knife, and maybe it's you're going around garage sales looking for old knives, or maybe you're just purchasing a new slip joint at a store, and I just wanted to talk about what are the things that I look for in a quality slip joint. Now, this may not be all the things, and some of these things may bother some people and not other people. And I'm not saying these necessarily reflect a bad quality control on a company, but there are certain things I think that stand out above the rest, like anything else. And I just wanted to point out a few of those things. Now, one thing you could do if you purchase a knife like this might be one you might want to avoid. Let's see if I can focus this. Yeah, this one's seen better days. A little bit of corrosion there, to say the least. This was actually one. Isn't this cool looking? This is I purchased this on eBay, I think, like 10 years ago or more, and it was just so cool looking. I put a bid in. It was like $10 or something. It's totally been rusted out. I think they sprayed some kind of spray paint over it later, but look at that. Look at the corrosion on the thing. It looks like it was found in the Titanic. This is an old Case 70s era Barlow. The Case XX there on the bolster. But anyway, just thought I'd share that with you. It's kind of a fun little talking piece there. But yeah, you'd want to stay away from corrosion. But what are some things that maybe aren't as noticeable, maybe a little more subtle, that you may not be aware of? Well, first thing, fit and finish. We all know about that in all kinds of knives. But on slip joint knives, I like to look at the back springs, which would be right here. And do you notice here there are no gaps in these back springs, meaning there's no if I shine a light through here, you won't be able to see the light for the most part. Oh, there's a little one right there. And like there's different grades, some things I'm not as worried about as others, and there are some that would really bother me. Here's a very cheap Pakistan made knife. Look at that jigging on there. Horrendous. Okay, if I shine a light through this, you'll see you see the light coming through the back springs there. Okay, that's something I would try to avoid in a slip joint knife. You want it as tight as possible. You want the springs to be lining up with the or the liners to be lining up with the springs as close as possible, and with the scale material. One example, now this is a Tony Bowes Case collaboration. Okay, this is the Millennium Trapper. It's the second addition to the Tony Bowes collaboration, and this is just a superb example of quality in a slip joint. In fact, I've handled a lot of custom slip joints before. I've owned a number of them, and even handled a few of Tony Bowes customs himself. And this particular knife, and it doesn't mean every single knife from this series was like this, but this one is custom quality. I'm really pleased with this one. But let me show you. Look at the liners. It almost looks like one solid piece of metal there, where they blend in with the back springs. If I were to shine this, you won't see anything coming through here, I don't believe. Watch, it will probably show. No. Very tight tolerances there. Okay, I'm also looking for blade wobble, like a lot of people do, because in slip joints it's even more an issue, because there's no screw that you're trying to tighten up there or able to tighten to loosen that. Vertical blade play is not, I find, is not usually an issue because the spring keeps it tight, but it's the side-to-side play that bothers me. This one is rock solid. There's different degrees that I think are tolerable in a slip joint. You're going to have a little more play. It's not going to be exactly like your Sabenza. All this one is, and there are some that are really tight and just wonderful in that way. But blade side to side blade play is definitely an issue I would look for, and is one of my pet peeves. It doesn't bother everybody, but I really like a knife that doesn't have blade play, which I'm sure a lot of you do as well. Next would be centered blades. Are the blades centered? You can see here, this one, it's not showing too well. This pen blade on the side is leaning over to the liner side a little bit. If you get it too much to one side, you're going to have blade rub, and that means the liner is going to rub against the blade, and you're going to get scratches on your blade. You don't want that. So you want to pay attention to blade centering. Now that's when you have a multiple blade knife like a Stockman. Okay, you're going to have a little more blade rub or a whittler. You're going to have some the way the blades are lined up. You're going to have a little more higher chance of you're going to have a little more blade rub there. But if it's done correctly, they won't touch at all and they'll be centered. Like these jackknives should be dead center. This one is not. But like I showed you on this knife, this one is perfect. So you can see how the blades are nicely centered there. Okay, so you might have heard the word walk and talk. What does that mean? Well, it basically talks about the strength of the back spring and how the blade opens. You don't want a blade that's going to be saggy when you open it and close it. You want some good snap to your blade when it closes. You want to hear it snap. Some people describe it as a gator snap. You know, there's different levels. They even have a scale of a pull scale. You see people selling knives will say on the scale of 1 to 10, the pull is a 6 or a 7. Just mean how hard is it for you to open the blade? Because there are things called a nail breaker. You want to stay away from things where it's so tight you can't get that. It almost breaks your nail or will break your nail trying to open it up. You want to stay away from that just because it's not usable. You want a good in-between tension of a nice snap, but easy to open and close. Here's a view of the blade centering on this swayback jack case. Swayback jack did a great job on this. I highly recommend this knife. They did this run of knives that they did on these. Everyone I've handled is outstanding. There's something called a, you'll hear flush in 3 positions. The back springs are flush in 3 positions. So what does that mean? That means that here are your back springs. In the closed position, they're lined up. They're lined up flush with the liners in the bolster, and you can see that here. But when you open it, especially with knives in particular with a half stop, and what that is, meaning when you open it, it stops halfway and then it opens again. So the way they cut the tang of the knife, it's able to open at a halfway point and close. And I think originally that's just for safety reasons. So when you're closing a knife, it's just not going to slam shut on your fingers. But a lot of the higher end knives have that now. Excuse me, guys. Hold on just a second. My light source is going out here. A lot of knives have that now, and so to be flush in the 3 positions, you'll see this is at the half stop position on this knife in particular. The back springs lie flush. They're even with the back springs are even with the liners. Okay, and when you open it up, same. So all 3 positions, open, half stop, and closed position, they should be perfectly flush. The back springs and the liners. That's what you're looking for. Here's an example of one that's not. Okay, it's a nice knife, great looking knife, but if you open this up, you'll see at the half stop, you'll see how that spring is sticking up right there. Okay, So that's just an example how it's not. It's flush in open position, it's flush in the closed position, but not at the half stop position. Does that make this a bad knife? Not at all. Not at all. I'm just talking about little picky things. If you're looking for things that are to make your knife as flawless as possible, that's what you're looking for. It still functions fine. This blade does not have any blade wobble. It has a tiny bit, not that I would be concerned about in a slip joint. Quality knife. Another thing you want to look at is when you get, obviously you're dealing with slip joint knives, you might have bone handles or even Darylin or plastic handles. You want to look for cracks in the bone. Sometimes natural material like bone or stag are going to have some natural little cracks and fissures in the material. Sometimes they call them blood grooves. You mainly want to make sure there are no cracks that are running to the pin of your knives, the pin construction. You want to make sure there are no cracks that are going from the pin to the bolster, because those are ones that are going to, that were put there when the blade was made, when the handle was put on the blade, and they're probably going to increase. You also want to look for chips. Sometimes you get knives that have chips in them. I don't have one here. I had one. Not that it's a bad thing. If it's a clean chip, it's not a big deal. But as far as looking for flawless knives or ones that are in best shape possible, you want to take or look into that, because that happens as well. One thing people don't look at too much is that when they jig the bone on these, the jigging's done first, and then the handle's put on the knife, and then everything's fit together. And you'll see, do you see the little dents in the bolster? It's because the jigging was deep at this end, and so in order to keep it flush so your fingernail doesn't catch on it, they have to indent the bolster a little bit to line up with the jigging. Is it a flaw? No. Is it kind of a... No, it's just a little extra step that's done that maybe could have been avoided, but they kind of a shortcut to keep it from becoming a real hang-up. You can kind of see it there too. Not a big deal, but here you go. There's one that's even worse. Right there on the end, you can see how it's... This one is not. That's not one. It appears to be one there, but it's not. It's actually the bone underneath. The bolsters aren't. You can see how tight on this example here, how tight the bone is to the bolster. There's no gaps there. Same with the handle material, the bone next to the liners. It's nice and tight. Okay, just a different quality. I mean, this is a $300 knife, $250 to $300. Okay, and this is a $50 maybe, $45, $50 knife, maybe a little more. I don't know. Depends on where you get it. Okay, so there are some quality differences. Let's see. Bolsters. There are some. When you're looking at knives, you're going to have different handle materials. Now these aren't flaws, but you'll have nickel silver bolsters here compared to stainless steel bolsters on a higher grade knife. Okay, these are brushed stainless. You may have the liners may be brass liners compared to where is it? I don't see it here, but well, you can just look at these. These are stainless bolsters here. Or you might have nickel silver. Stainless liners here. You might have nickel silver liners. Okay, that's just preference. There's nothing. The brass is going to tarnish a little easier. But things to consider: Seahorse Whittler, made by Case. A unique looking knife there with a Warncliffe blade, nice thick stock. So anyway, things to think about when you're checking out slip joint knives. Stay tuned. I hope to give you a little more view on some more companies and more knives to take a look at and look into. Thanks guys, I appreciate your time.